Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to imagine something with me right now. Imagine walking into any room with your head held high, radiating such genuine confidence that people can't help but notice you. Imagine having that special kind of energy that makes someone stop mid-conversation and think, "Who is that?" I'm not talking about looks. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about presence. That magnetic quality that makes someone want to know more about you, want to be around you, want to connect with you. Today, I'm going to share with you the truth about attraction, the real, honest truth that changed my life and has changed thousands of others. And I promise you this, if you apply what I'm about to teach you, your dating life will transform in ways you never thought possible. I remember when I was younger, watching people who seemed to effortlessly attract others. I'd wonder what secret they knew that I didn't. Was it something they were born with? Some magical charisma gene the rest of us missed out on? I spent years feeling invisible to the women I was interested in, years feeling that rejection was just my destiny. But then something happened. I discovered that attraction isn't random. It isn't magic. It's a skill, a learnable skill based on universal human psychology. And once I understood the principles, everything changed. Not overnight. This isn't some get attractive quick scheme, but steadily, profoundly, my entire experience with dating and relationships transformed. Now, before we go further, let me be clear about something. This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about tricks or games or treating people like conquests. That approach might get short-term results, but it never leads to genuine connection, and it certainly doesn't lead to happiness. What I'm talking about is becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts others because of your authentic value, confidence, and understanding of human connection. The first principle I want to share with you is something I call the attraction paradox. Here it is. The harder you try to make someone like you, the less likely they are to be attracted to you. Think about that for a moment. When you're desperately trying to impress someone, when you're changing yourself to fit what you think they want, when your happiness depends on their approval, you're actually pushing them away. I experienced this paradox firsthand for years. I would meet someone I was interested in, and suddenly I'd become this approval-seeking version of myself. I'd laugh too hard at their jokes. I'd agree with everything they said. I put their needs above my own in almost pathological ways. And invariably, I'd watch their interest fade before my eyes. Why does this happen? Because neediness is the ultimate attraction killer. Human beings are instinctively drawn to strength, to confidence, to people who have their own lives and their own sense of worth. We're attracted to people who don't need us but choose us. This is the great irony of attraction. To attract someone, you must be perfectly okay with not attracting them. This brings me to the second principle. Self-worth is the foundation of all attraction. You cannot expect others to value you more than you value yourself. Let that sink in. The relationship you have with yourself sets the pattern for how others will relate to you. When I look back at my own journey, I realized that the turning point wasn't when I learned some clever conversation technique or style tip. It was when I truly decided that I was worthy of love and respect exactly as I am. That decision, and it is a decision, make no mistake, changed everything about how I moved through the world. I started investing in myself, not to impress others, but because I genuinely wanted to grow. I developed passions and interests that had nothing to do with dating. I built a life that felt meaningful to me. And something miraculous happened. As I became more interested in my own life, others became more interested in me. This leads us to the third principle. Attraction is about energy, not appearance. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but what about looks? What about height? What about all those physical factors we can't control? And yes, I acknowledge that physical appearance plays a role in initial attraction. I would never deny that reality. But here's what most people miss. Physical appearance is just one factor among many, and its importance diminishes dramatically as genuine connection develops. I've known conventionally attractive people who couldn't keep a relationship because their energy repelled others. And I've known people who wouldn't stand out in a crowd but who magnetize others with their presence. What do I mean by energy? I'm talking about how it feels to be around you. Are you confident or insecure, positive or negative, present or distracted, authentic or performing? These qualities create an energy field around you that others can sense immediately, often before you've even spoken. I remember meeting a man once who completely transformed my understanding of attraction. He wasn't tall, he wasn't conventionally handsome, he wasn't wealthy, but when he walked into a room, people noticed. When he spoke, people listened. He had this quiet confidence, this genuine interest in others, this playful sparkle in his eye, and women were drawn to him in a way that defied conventional explanation. After getting to know him, I realized his secret. He genuinely liked himself, and he genuinely liked others. There was no desperation, no manipulation, no putting on a show. He was comfortable in his own skin and curious about the world around him. That combination created an irresistible energy that no physical flaw could diminish. This brings me to principle number 4. Genuine curiosity is more attractive than any attempt to be interesting. Most people approach attraction backward. They think, how can I make this person interested in me? How can I impress them? But true attraction doesn't work that way. The most magnetic quality you can develop is genuine curiosity about others. When you're truly interested in someone, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, they feel it. They feel seen, heard, and valued, and that feeling is addictive. In a world where most people are waiting for their turn to speak, someone who truly listens stands out like a lighthouse on a dark shore. I transformed my own conversations when I shifted from trying to impress to trying to discover. Instead of thinking about what I would say next, I became fascinated by the person in front of me. What makes them tick? What lights them up? What are they passionate about? When you approach interactions with this mindset, something magical happens. People open up to you, they feel connected to you, and yes, they become attracted to you. Now let's talk about principle number 5. Confidence comes from competence and self-acceptance. Many people misunderstand confidence. They think it means never feeling doubt, never experiencing insecurity. That's not confidence. That's delusion. Real confidence isn't the absence of insecurity. It's the ability to act despite it. Confidence comes from 2 main sources. First, it comes from competence, from knowing that you're good at things that matter to you. This doesn't mean you need to be good at everything. It means identifying areas that are important to you and developing mastery in those areas. Maybe it's your career. Maybe it's a creative pursuit. Maybe it's how you treat others. When you know you bring value in specific ways, you stand taller. The second source of confidence is self-acceptance. This means embracing your flaws and imperfections without letting them define you. It means understanding that you are a work in progress, and that's perfectly okay. When you can laugh at yourself, when you can acknowledge your weaknesses without shame, you develop a kind of unshakable confidence that's deeply attractive. I spent years trying to hide my flaws, thinking that perfection was the path to attraction, but I discovered something surprising. Vulnerability, when expressed with self-acceptance, is far more magnetic than any facade of perfection. When you can say, yes, this is where I struggle and I'm working on it, you give others permission to be human too. That creates connection on a level that perfectionism never can. Let's move to principle 6. Polarization is better than neutrality. This is something many people get wrong when trying to attract others. They try to be neutral, inoffensive, agreeable, thinking that by never taking a strong position, they'll appeal to everyone. But attraction doesn't work that way. When you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. Strong attraction requires strong opinions, clear boundaries, and the willingness to occasionally disagree. Yes, this means some people won't like you. That's not just okay, it's necessary. The same qualities that strongly attract certain people will repel others. That's the nature of polarization, and it's essential for deep connection. I remember when I started expressing my authentic opinions more freely. Some people drifted away from my life, and that was scary at first. But the connections that remained grew stronger, and new people entered my life who appreciated the real me. Polarization filters out incompatible connections and strengthens compatible ones. It's the secret to finding people who are genuinely right for you. This brings us to principle 7. Attraction flows from purpose. Nothing is more attractive than a person moving purposefully through life. When you have goals that excite you, when you're building something meaningful, when you have a reason to get out of bed that has nothing to do with impressing others, you become naturally magnetic. Purpose creates passion, and passion is irresistible. It gives you something to talk about, something to share, something that makes your eyes light up. It gives you a reason to improve, to learn, to grow. And most importantly, it ensures that your happiness doesn't depend on whether someone is attracted to you or not. I discovered this principle after years of making relationships the center of my life, when my mood, my self-esteem, my very sense of worth depended on how my dating life was going. I repelled the very connections I sought. But when I found purpose beyond relationships, when I committed to goals that truly mattered to me, something shifted. My need for validation diminished, and paradoxically, my attractiveness increased. Now, let's talk about principle 8. Social proof is a reality you can harness. Humans are social creatures. We're influenced by how others respond to people. When we see someone surrounded by friends, laughing, engaged in conversation, we automatically assume there's something valuable about that person. This is social proof in action. This doesn't mean you need to become the life of the party if that's not authentic to you, but it does mean that building a genuine social circle, creating real friendships based on mutual care and interest, will dramatically increase your attractiveness. When others see that you can build and maintain meaningful connections, they'll assume you have the qualities necessary for connection. I was once deeply introverted with just a couple of close friends. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle if it fulfills you. But I discovered that by gradually expanding my social circle, by nurturing more connections, by becoming more comfortable in group settings, I created more opportunities for attraction to develop naturally. This leads to principle 9. Tension is essential for romantic attraction. This is where many nice people go wrong. They think that making someone feel completely comfortable and safe will lead to attraction. And while comfort and safety are indeed important, they're not sufficient. Romantic attraction requires tension, the delicious uncertainty of, will we or won't we? Tension isn't about playing games or being inconsistent. It's about maintaining your boundaries, valuing your time, expressing your desires honestly, and allowing space for the other person to wonder, to pursue, to desire. When everything is immediately available, immediately certain, something vital is lost. I used to make this mistake constantly. I would meet someone I was interested in, and I would make myself completely available. I would text back immediately, agree to any plan they suggested, and essentially remove all mystery from the equation. And inevitably, I'd watch their interest fade away. I wasn't creating any tension, any space for desire to develop. When I learned to value my time, to maintain my own life and interests, to be honest about my attraction while still prioritizing myself, that's when dating transformed for me. The tension that naturally exists when two whole people with full lives come together is the electricity that powers attraction. Let's discuss principle 10. Physical presence is a learnable skill. How you move through physical space, how you hold yourself, how you use your voice. These elements of presence have an enormous impact on attraction. And here's the good news. They can all be improved with practice. I used to believe that charisma was something you were born with. Either you had that it factor or you didn't. But research and experience have taught me that physical presence is largely about habits. Habits of posture, movement, eye contact, voice modulation. These can be developed like any other skill. When I began consciously working on my presence, standing taller, moving more deliberately, speaking more clearly, maintaining comfortable eye contact, I noticed an immediate difference in how others responded to me. These weren't fake changes. They were alignments with my best self. I wasn't becoming someone else. I was becoming more fully myself. This brings us to principle 11. Emotional regulation is the hidden key to attraction. In simple terms, this means being able to manage your emotional responses rather than being controlled by them. When rejection doesn't devastate you, when success doesn't make you arrogant, when you can stay centered regardless of external circumstances, you become incredibly attractive. I struggled with emotional regulation for years. A single rejection could send me into a tailspin of self-doubt that lasted for weeks. A sign of interest could have me planning our future together after one date. This emotional volatility made consistent attraction impossible. How could someone feel secure with me when I couldn't even feel secure with myself? Learning to regulate my emotions through mindfulness practices, through cognitive reframing, through physical exercise, changed everything. I became more stable, more grounded. I could experience disappointment without being defined by it. I could experience hope without losing perspective. This emotional solidity created a sense of safety that drew others toward me. Let's talk about Principle 12. Storytelling is the language of connection. Humans are wired for stories. We make sense of our lives, our world through narrative, and the ability to tell compelling stories about your life, your passions, your lessons learned is a powerful attraction tool. I'm not talking about rehearsed monologues or exaggerated tales. I'm talking about the authentic sharing of experiences in a way that creates emotion and meaning. When you can take an ordinary experience and highlight what made it significant to you, you create opportunities for others to connect with your values, your perspective, your humanity. I used to think that attraction was about impressing others with achievements or status symbols. But I discovered that people are far more drawn to someone who can make waiting in line at the grocery store sound meaningful than someone who can rattle off impressive resume points without emotion. Storytelling creates intimacy, and intimacy is the soil in which attraction grows. Principle 13 is something many people overlook. Humor is a shortcut to attraction. Few qualities are more universally attractive than the ability to create laughter. Humor demonstrates intelligence, perspective, confidence, and emotional generosity all at once. It's a social superpower. But here's what many don't understand. Humor isn't about memorizing jokes or being the loudest person in the room. True humor comes from perspective, from seeing the world slightly differently and being willing to share that perspective. It comes from noticing absurdities, embracing imperfections, finding joy in the ordinary. I was never the funny one in my group. I thought humor was a talent you either had or didn't. But as I became more comfortable with myself, as I began to embrace my own unique perspective, I found my authentic sense of humor. It wasn't about becoming someone I wasn't. It was about fully expressing who I already was. This brings us to Principle 14. Attraction requires risk. There is no path to deep connection that doesn't involve vulnerability, that doesn't require stepping into uncertainty. You must be willing to express interest, to make the first move, to risk rejection if you want to create possibilities for attraction. Fear of rejection keeps so many people trapped in loneliness. They wait for absolute certainty before taking action, but attraction doesn't provide certainty in advance. It unfolds through a series of small risks, each one creating space for connection to either deepen or clarify. I spent years paralyzed by this fear, waiting for signs so obvious that rejection would be impossible, but those signs rarely come. What transformed my experience was reframing rejection entirely. I started seeing it not as a judgment of my worth, but as information about compatibility. Not everyone will be attracted to me, and that's not just okay, it's necessary. Rejection is simply the process of filtering for the connections that are truly right for me. Principle 15 might surprise you. Boundaries create attraction. Many people mistakenly believe that being completely accommodating, always available, never saying no will make them more attractive. The opposite is true. Clear, consistent boundaries signal self-respect, and self-respect is fundamentally attractive. Boundaries show that you value yourself. They demonstrate that you know what you want and what you don't want. They create the necessary space for others to respect you as well. Without boundaries, attraction quickly turns to resentment or indifference. I learned this lesson the hard way. For years, I would drop everything for someone I was attracted to. I would rearrange my schedule, cancel plans with friends, ignore my own needs. I thought this would show how much I cared, but instead it showed how little I valued myself. And invariably, the attraction would fade. When I started setting healthy boundaries, when I began saying no when I meant no, when I maintained my own priorities and principles, something counterintuitive happened. People became more attracted to me, not less. They sensed that being in my life was meaningful precisely because I didn't let just anyone into it. Let's discuss Principle 16. Growth is attractive at any age. Many people believe that attraction is primarily about youth or physical perfection. But what really draws people to us over time is our capacity for growth, our willingness to learn, to evolve, to become more fully ourselves. A growth mindset, the belief that you can develop your abilities through dedication and hard work, is deeply attractive. It shows resilience, humility, and passion for life. It demonstrates that you're still curious, still engaged, still becoming. This quality remains attractive at 20, 40, 60, or 80. I've witnessed this principle in action throughout my life. The most magnetic people I've known weren't those who peaked early and clung to past glories. They were those who continually reinvented themselves, who approached life with perpetual curiosity, who saw challenges as opportunities rather than threats. This brings us to Principle 17. Authentic communication is the foundation of lasting attraction. In a world full of games and manipulative tactics, straightforward honesty stands out. The ability to express your thoughts, feelings, and desires clearly and respectfully creates a level of trust that fuels attraction. I spent years thinking that attraction required strategic ambiguity, that being too clear about my interests would somehow diminish it. I was afraid that honesty would make me vulnerable, would give away my power. But I discovered that authentic communication doesn't diminish attraction, it deepens it. When you can say what you mean and mean what you say, when your words align with your actions, when you can express difficult truths with kindness, you create the conditions for real intimacy. And intimacy, not mystery, is what sustains attraction over time. Principle 18 focuses on something vital. Physical touch is a language of connection. Appropriate, respectful physical touch, a handshake, a high five, a brief touch on the arm during conversation, creates connection on a biological level. It releases oxytocin, reduces stress hormones, and builds trust. Many people are touch avoidant, especially in dating contexts, because they're afraid of crossing boundaries or sending the wrong message. This caution is understandable. Consent and respect must always come first. But when touch is appropriate to the context and the relationship, it can accelerate attraction in powerful ways. I was once extremely uncomfortable with physical touch. I would stand at an awkward distance during conversations, avoid handshakes, flinch at casual contact. This created an invisible barrier between myself and others. Learning to become comfortable with appropriate touch, learning to use this fundamental human language of connection, transformed my ability to create attraction. Let's talk about principle 19. Lifestyle congruence creates sustainable attraction. By this, I mean that your daily habits and choices must align with your values and goals. When what you do each day reflects who you truly are and who you want to become, you develop an authenticity that's naturally attractive. Many people try to present a certain image to attract others, but their actual lifestyle contradicts this image. Perhaps they present themselves as ambitious, but have no disciplined habits to support this ambition. Perhaps they claim to value fitness, but haven't exercised in years. This incongruence creates an attraction that quickly fades upon closer inspection. I experienced this disconnect in my own life. I would tell people about my dreams and goals, but my daily habits didn't support these aspirations at all. There was a gap between who I said I was and who I actually was, and this gap repelled deeper connection. When I finally began to align my daily actions with my stated values, when my lifestyle became congruent with my self-concept, attraction became more natural and more lasting. This brings us to principle 20. Giving value first is the secret to receiving attraction. Many approach dating with a mindset of what can I get? The transformative question is what can I give? Not in a transactional way, but in a genuine desire to create positive experiences for others. Value comes in many forms. It might be making someone laugh, helping them see a situation from a new perspective, listening when they need to be heard, connecting them with an opportunity, or simply creating a space where they can be themselves without judgment. When you focus on giving value rather than getting validation, attraction follows naturally. I spent years approaching interactions with an underlying anxiety about whether I was being liked, being approved of, being found attractive. This self-focus created tension and neediness. When I shifted to thinking about how I could make others feel good, how I could contribute positively to their experience, that tension dissolved. Paradoxically, by focusing less on being liked, I became more likable.